Careful, SpongeBob! Careful, SpongeBob! SpongeBob, careful! Careful, SpongeBob! Careful, SpongeBob! Careful, SpongeBob! Careful, SpongeBob!
Patrick, the lid's already off.
Oh, now it's my turn.
The edge of fumble, the edge of failure, the edge of sadness and disappointment? We were once again graced by a new Bungie release, and judging by how the community is currently exploding in uproar, while Steam player counts are imploding, this one didn't land so well now, did it, Bungie? So why don't we get right into the most important part? Destiny 2, The Edge of Fate, costs $39.99 or your regional equivalent. Should you buy it at that price right now? No. Not so much due to the quality of the DLC itself, but due to all the surrounding systems changes that happened alongside the DLC release. The DLC itself, however, is also lacking in certain areas. I would argue something in the ballpark of $29.99 or lower is more reasonable. I cannot recommend buying it at this time as of the making of this review. Destiny in its current state is pretty broken. I'm talking about fundamental systemic issues. Maybe in a year, when some of the biggest issues are hopefully ironed out, maybe then I could recommend it at a discount. Not right now though. Do not buy this. I'm not even trying to be mean to Bungie here. I really do love this game, but I feel the need to do my due diligence and warn potential buyers. And while we're at it, just so you can have a good laugh, let me show you how much trust I still had for Bungie. Yeah, get it out of your system, point and laugh. I do deserve it for still somehow buying into the cope? At this point, is it hope or is it cope? What led us here then to this current state of affairs? Bungie tried to advertise this expansion as a fresh start, a new saga, fundamental system changes, big balance adjustments, new player focus, the portal, a new way to earn gear, a revamp of the old armor and weapons system. I watched all of these streams and trailers, and with every minute I watched, I got less and less enthusiastic about this release. But not because the DLC itself looked bad, but because the fundamental system changes surrounding the DLC did not fill me with much motivation. And the community felt the same way. We even had infighting between content creators and the player base. That should show you people were already not happy during the lead up to this DLC. This expansion was divisive before it was even released. What do you get then for your $40? Let's first talk about the campaign. I specifically want to talk about the story first, even though this is a video game and gameplay is of the utmost priority. However, this campaign story deserves a bit of a special treatment, because the story is actually pretty good around this time. We investigate a new planet, Kepler, drawn to it due to a singularity at the center of that planet. And having a black hole inside a planet is likely not something you should just ignore.
Jesus Christ. What the hell?
So we land and immediately are accosted by the Fallen, who really don't like us being here. Fighting through those Fallen, we eventually meet a new character, Lodi. who landed here sometime earlier.
But you know what I like more than materialistic things? Knowledge.
We work towards uncovering how to help the Ionians, the native people of Kepler, who seem to speak some sort of unknown language that we cannot understand. During the campaign, you pretty much explore and see all of Kepler. We deal with the Elixni House of Exiles initially, and we get to know their zealot leader, the Archon. He has a few screws loose and sounds kinda funny.
Our catch takes flight. Our drills tipped with the giver's power. Into the singularity we ascend.
I really don't like this guy.
Our main objective is to find those strangelets. Yes, that's what they are called. Those should give us access to the singularity once we have all of them in our possession. And we find Oren, who quit being the emissary of the Nine. Lodi throughout the campaign acts as a fish out of water, slowly learning what happened to, well, Earth, and taking the news as good as anyone in his situation could.
I mean, didn't someone think that to etch a date in a stone or something helpful?
Edge of Fate?
Eventually, we get a big reveal that Ikora and Lodi knew each other in the distant past, and we get a very Control-inspired cutscene that shows us how Ikora died. It turns out the Nine killed Ikora, and on top of that, the Nine have been acting in the shadows for quite some time. For a very, very long time actually. Now, that cutscene isn't the only thing that reminds me of Control in this DLC. We get how the Nine talk with each other, being very similar to how the Bureau talks. And we got totally not the service pistol. Borrowing from the Remedyverse though isn't a bad idea at all. The one thing I'm not so sure about is the whole involvement of the Nine. I'm not a lore guru, so I cannot actually confirm if this counts as retconning or not. It feels a bit weird that this cosmic force has been acting all this time in the background. Another thing I didn't really like is how we are all of a sudden no longer mentioning the Witness and his influence on the story so far. We see the collapse in a time skip cutscene, but we never really mention the Witness, not to Lodi or the Ionians. I think we mention him once, but that's about it. It seems Bungie really wants to not acknowledge the past lore and history. I get it, you want a story reset, but it feels a bit tacky to wipe out the Witness and all the previous established stories like that. There isn't even a recap for new players to get caught up. Later on in the story, we also find the Vex, who are hanging out on Kepler as well and are commanded by the Conductor. Oh, great. The Conductor, my favorite character, aka Maya Sundaresh version 2.0. Yeah, she's back. If you missed the past seasonal story, at least they do explain who she is. To keep it short, she's one of the villains alongside our fallen zealot, Archon. We fight the Vex for a certain stretch in the campaign and finally get to see the Nine interact and talk with each other. The Nine need all members to vote on a conclusion to move forward, but 3 is missing. 3 being a member of the Nine, obviously. Eventually we get access to the final area within Kepler to stop the crazy Archon from expanding the singularity. We arrive and witness a Lovecraftian creature just hanging around in a black hole.
There are 3 doors in front of you. Behind 2 of the doors are a go. Behind the 3rd door is a brand new car. Which door do you want to open?
Dude, there's 2 goats I might be able to get. Hell yeah, I'm opening any of the doors.
Okay, you open door number 2. You want to open up door number 2? So in the meantime, let's go open up door number 1 and I show you it's a go. Do you stay with your original selection or do you go with the next one?
I'm just gonna keep the door that I chose.
Okay. Why is that?
There might be another goat. Oh, fuck. We put the Archon down and then we get our ending cutscene setting up future events. The corpse we saw, that was actually 3. And he was killed by none other than Maya Sundaresh, the conductor. We revive 3 for a short time using the Drifter's Hall. I knew those half-brain-dead Gambit matches I played were useful for something. 3 comes back to life for a short time, but ultimately cannot exist in this material realm. We learn that the conductor, Maya Sundaresh, pulled 3 out of his dimension into real space. Maya Sundaresh seemingly is being set up to be a bigger overarching villain this time around. I'm not the biggest fan of her conceptually, but I always thought her voice actress was criminally underused. My hope is that she turns out to be a deeper character as the story goes on. Through Lodi, 3 tells us his death has started an extinction event, and he also tells us how we can stop it. Bind the 9. Lodi becomes the new emissary of the 9, and that is our setup for more stories to come in the future. A bit of a vague ending, but Bungie is known for these. Honestly, that was pretty great. I want to especially highlight the dialogue quality and voice acting this time around. All of that was phenomenal. Lodi, especially voiced by Brian Villalobos, did such a fantastic job. Lodi is the biggest highlight of the expansion for me. Such a well-written character. We also got Drifter, who came a long way. I gotta admit, this guy was almost my number 1 before Lodi came into the picture. And then we got Ikora, who sadly for this release is not voiced by her original voice actress. But Deborah Wilson does a pretty good job as Ikora's replacement voice. It is a bit difficult to not hear Savathun though, and it makes me feel like Savathun put on an Ikora skin suit and is once again fooling all of us. But that's it. I give this campaign a solid 8 out of 10. Compared to the other slop that we have gotten in the past, this is pretty damn good. Now, we need to talk about the gameplay. The gameplay. Oh boy, where do I even start here? Let's first talk about...
Leave me alone!
Okay. We will first talk about the main gameplay mechanics of this DLC. First of all, it was heavily marketed with the idea of being a Metroidvania-like experience. I don't think Bungie played any Metroidvanias, or maybe they looked at Samus going ball mode and went, yep, that's it. So let me talk about Metroidvanias for a moment, just to put this into perspective. A Metroidvania is never accompanied by a linear campaign that tells you exactly where to go. It relies heavily on non-linear exploration. It starts off more linear due to the limited toolkit, but opens up more and more as skills are earned. Your player character earns skills through natural exploration, and these skills, especially the movement upgrades, then lead to expanded exploration and unlocking more things in the game. These might be areas you have passed through and seen before, or wholly new areas and secrets. Every region is instantly recognizable, and even just with a rudimentary map, it is clear where the player is at all times. The abilities and skills are all very well integrated into the entire game and are vital to both progression and combat. Combat especially is enhanced by those abilities, and combat also requires the use of said abilities during combat. Now, how does Bungie deliver on this concept? The level design already does not lend itself to the Metroidvania style. The areas are incredibly samey, and you actively pass through these same areas multiple times already without even utilizing any of the expanded toolkit that gets handed out to you. And those abilities, well, it's keycards. Yeah, they're just keys. Blue keycard, purple keycard, green keycard. Here are the 3 abilities that Bungie doles out to you over the entire campaign. First, we got Meta Spark. You turn into a ball. You can go into small spaces. Later on you can break specific enemy shields with it, and you can charge stations in the world. How does Meta Spark play out? Well, you see a boss or an encounter, and for sure there's a Meta Spark shaped hole in the floor. You already know that there's going to be a charge station at the end of that hole to make the boss somehow vulnerable for a damage phase. You see a hole or a gap? Well, you use Meta Spark to go through there. But it's not like this is in any way natural or meaningful engagement. They literally closed down normal doors, then put a Meta Spark hole right next to it. It's so jarring that all of these conveniently shaped holes exist in this world. It's just another key for a door. You see a station? Well, time for Meta Spark to charge that thing. It isn't really a mechanic, so to say, it's just a convoluted gimmick to progress or open a chest or a door. Yeah, you can zap enemies and break some shields, but it does not feel like an integral ability. It feels like it's shoehorned into the gameplay flow. And you are constantly bothered and pressured to use this gimmick, even though every encounter could have just as well worked without it. Next, the Relocator, a portal gun that you shoot platforms with. Then they teleport you if you step into the active portal. To be honest, I don't mind this one, since it's just a minor mechanic to solve secrets and, well, open doors. Later on you can bounce these shots through redirection dishes. Some of them you have to move into the correct position, but that's about it. The gun has actual combat application though, since you can shoot enemies with it if you don't use the portal. Once you use the portal though, it despawns the gun. You cannot whip this out wherever you go. It is only available in specific locations to pick up. Then we have Metamorph, the last active ability that you unlock. It acts as a green ball of snot that can be thrown at green glowing objects to rearrange them, or thrown at a wall to open them with a key, like a door. Well, are there lasers you cannot get through? Well, if there's green snot nearby, you likely have some sort of stairs you can construct using this mechanic. Some in the community are already predicting that this will be sold to us again later in the Star Wars DLC as totally not the Force. Honestly, I can see it. This Metamorph is essentially already moving items around, kinda like you could do with the Force powers. So you got 3 flavors of keys to open doors with. All of these will be thrown in your face constantly during the campaign. Oh, and then we got Rosetta, which just acts as an arbitrary barrier for exploration. No, and I mean you literally open barriers with this to progress in the map of Kepler. That's it. You never use any of these abilities because it's organic and fun. You just reach the point in the game where it's just mandatory to use this specific ability now because the devs build an arbitrary encounter around it, or they throw you in a dead end, and for sure there is a meta ball shaped solution to the dead end. The only ability that gets permanently unlocked for free roam is the Metaspark. But since you got that ability at the very beginning of the campaign, it cannot act as an organic extension to exploration. Then what about the enemies and the big baddies we will be facing? Well, I sure hope you like Fallen Captains, Big Shanks, Big Briggs and Blue Balls, because we got plenty of those in the DLC. Oh, and the Vex, well, I heard you like Minotaurs and Hydras, more Minotaurs, and maybe another Hydra, and throw in some Cyclops. Yeah, we got some ad density in the DLC, but variety in combat encounters, not so much. You will be running around in confusing rooms, forced to use the funny Metaspark, throwing snot at the walls, and shooting purple balls around, all the while facing bosses with at least 1 damage immunity phase, if not 2. And for sure you will be using the new gimmicks to get rid of their invulnerability. Oh, did I forget about the Vex chickens? Yeah, we got chickens too, baby, let's go! Not just are the combat encounters pretty ass, the campaign is also 2 times longer than any other campaign ever was. Oh, and not just that, you will be wondering if you are going insane or going in circles in this campaign, because they will be reusing the same areas again and again. Now instead of a Minotaur, there's like a big Hydra in this room. They really wanted you to see all of Kepler at least 2 times. I do wonder if there was a change to the mission structure before launch, since the Triumph category for Kepler has separate mission types. We got campaign missions, and then there are time ledge missions. You are forced to play both of them for the campaign. So I wonder if these time ledge missions were integrated into the main campaign to stretch playtime. Remember when after we were done with the final Shape campaign, we had these little extra adventures that gave us some tidbits of story and lore we could play at our leisure in anticipation of the raid race? Yeah, I get the feeling that time ledge missions might have been separate, but now they're just part of the campaign. Even if these were separate adventures, they're not very good. You also better make sure to get to the side quests during the campaign. As it turns out, you cannot just do them whenever you want, as these are integral to the story. So if you do them after the campaign, you will be experiencing weird inconsistent stories, as these missions canonically take place during the campaign. Also, free choice to play the missions however you want boils down to choosing which one of the 2 missions you want to do first. This DLC also had its fair share of bugs, including very strange respawn points miles away from the point where you had died. All in all, the bugs and glitches this time around were at least not impossible progression stoppers, and the servers were pretty stable. That might be due to only 1/3 of the usual player base logging in to play this DLC though. You are likely aware of the fact that you have to play the campaign on all 3 characters, if you want the final exotic rewards for all of them. But the Edge of Fate introduced the difficulty modes for the campaign. Those unlock for Kepler after you're done with your first playthrough. Well, guess what you get to do now, buddy? You get to play all of those missions again on Brave, then on Mythic difficulty. And no, doing them all on Mythic does not complete a Triumph for the lower difficulties. I made a joke about how we might have to play the campaign 9 times before the DLC was released. That was a joke, not a suggestion, Bungie. Also, if you think you're going to get the rewards again from those chests when playing through the campaign on Mythic and Brave, you would be wrong. Of course, those chests only reward you once for the first playthrough, and then never again. So have fun replaying these missions over and over on progressively more unfunny difficulties for your prized title. I have to say, I expected like a 5 out of 10 here, but I was still somehow let down by this gameplay. This is just sad and needlessly annoying. Yeah, 2 out of 10 for the gameplay in this DLC. I was just glad it was over. And no, I'm not going to replay the campaign on Mythic or Brave. No thanks. I did at least get my new exotic armor pieces, so let's let's try those out. Let's see, maybe those are cool. Let's talk about Kepler itself now. Our newest location added to our director. Well, let's see. Okay, we got no new strikes here. We got no lost sectors. We don't even have a destination vendor on Kepler. There is no patrols on Kepler. We have one singular activity, which serves as the public event replacement. This activity is also time-gated for some reason. There's also no Kepler-based PvP map. And Gambit is dead, but that's not news to anyone. So far, so good. How is exploration then? Well, you see, you use Meta Spark. Well, you run around opening chests and find secrets, and that's it. Kepler is also really confusing to navigate. It's just a mess of tunnels, caves and connectors. Also, the map itself is not helpful at all. Does the planet at least look good? Usually the art team is cooking. I think this time it's a bit undercooked, to be honest. Kepler looks like a thrown together mix of Titan and old Russia with some Elixir architecture all blended together. Put some of these Vex structures in there too. The different regions are supposed to have their own unique theme, but it all blurs together in this mishmash of assets and corridors. Some of the areas are overgrown with green stuff, I guess, that looks a bit more unique. Green snot on the walls. The final area is peak, of course, but this is just set dressing for a mission and the boss fight. Also, let's not ignore that there is English text on monitors on a planet where nobody supposedly speaks English. Yeah, the asset reuse here is going a bit wild. Also, why is there just an aircraft carrier as the backdrop? And nothing about it is ever mentioned, and we don't even get to go there? Now you're done with the campaign, and you're done with exploring Kepler. What can you do now? You can suffer through Mythic, but let's say you don't want to torture yourself. You could play the new Sieve activity, which is just disguised Onslaught. You could start working on getting that title, and Oh, the raid! The raid! How could I forget? Let's talk about that raid then. I think I've never seen a more divisive raid to this day. It turns out, in their infinite wisdom, Bungie turned the raid into nightmare torture DPS tests that only the most cracked out players might overcome. It then turned out those players might not have been as cracked out as we thought, because this raid also had the biggest cheating scandal that I have ever seen in Destiny raiding history. Apparently, 70% of teams who finished the raid and earned the raid emblem were playing with cheaters. So they either paid for carries or they were on a team with a cheater. High levels of cheating is usually a sign that maybe you overdid it with the difficulty and now you got all those gamer egos bruised. I would really like to talk more about the raid, but alas, I did not play it. The raid is probably the best activity out of the entire release, without a doubt. One thing the raid has made evident, though, is that Bungie did not plan this one out at all. Bungie made it very clear that loadout swapping is not a tactic that they like. Judging by the fact that one of the negative modifiers in high-end activities is called no swap, this raid was so ridiculously hard that loadout swapping was the #1 strategy to beat it. This is probably not how Bungie envisioned it. Besides the balancing issues, the damage numbers and DPS and damage output might have been completely bugged during the raid race. Let's also list a few funny bugs that happened just in general. Rally flags were not working. A sprint bug happened every now and then that required a return to orbit. And players were still struggling with the disconnect that happens if you just simply play for too long. What kind of rewards did those day 1 raiders get for doing the hardest thing imaginable? Well, they got tier 1 gun drops and tier 1 armor. Also, due to Bungie's changes, it looks like optimal DPS seems to be super spam and the use of Outbreak perfected to get those supers back quickly. That for sure is an interesting choice, Bungie. As you have imagined, you get to have the privilege to play through the raid multiple times before you can even get higher tiered gear. If you wanted to farm spoils from this raid, good luck. If you don't enable arbitrary challenge modes called feats, you don't get any spoils. So if you really wanted to get that high tier endgame gear, you would have to play through the raid like 4 to 5 times to unlock the higher tiers, and then burden yourself with feats, aka extra challenges, and then maybe you get tier 4 armor and weapons. At least Bungie has announced changes to this requirement, and thus at some point only one normal mode completion will unlock the next tier of gear drops. Good on Bungie for changing this, but you still have to wonder why was it set up like this in the first place? I also have a feeling that Sherpaing in this raid is going to be pretty rare. But look, the raid might not be for me and you, so we can just hop into a seasonal activity then, right? They got rid of seasonal activities, unless you want to count Deceive. Seasons are now just solo operations, and besides picking up some logs in those missions, there also isn't that much to be done here. The season pass resets pretty soon too, so good luck to anyone that cares about the rewards in there. You really gotta force yourself to grind those season pass levels now. Also, somehow progress feels slower now, but that might just be me being schizophrenic or something. So, no seasons anymore. But what about those good old core playlist activities then? Now is the time to talk about the big changes Bungie added with the DLC. Granted, these are all free editions, but maybe after hearing what they did to this game, you might not even want these system changes for free, to be honest. First, let's talk about how they just had to rebalance everything in this game. Power and light level work like this when facing enemies now. If you are 100 light level over enemies, that should feel roughly equivalent to even power during the final shape. If you are at even power with the enemies, this should feel slightly more difficult. If you are 40 light level under, that should be kinda like Grandmaster difficulty in the final shape. And finally, if you are 100 light level under, all enemies will be immune to damage. They added new difficulty modes that almost always, put you under power. Normal mode obviously is on even power, advanced is 10 levels under, expert 20, master 30, grandmaster 40, and ultimate 50 light levels under the enemies. Fun fact, by the way, some of these changes have led to old activities such as dungeons and raids to be significantly more annoying and less fun. Now onward to all of the generic balancing changes. All melees in the game have been reworked. All melee damage increasing buffs are now additive in damage stacking. Besides the melee stat itself, that one is stacking multiplicatively with additive damage buffs. They basically touched every single melee ability and buff in the game and messed around with glaives again. I'm not a math guy, but in the end some nerf, some buffs. It feels like change for the sake of change. It's not like Bungie already broke and remade like 5 different baseline systems already, and now on top of all of this, they are adding these wide-reaching balancing modifications. All of this also, of course, coincided with stealth nerfs and changes that were not communicated in the patch notes. Bungie then had to acknowledge these only after the community reminded them about it in a very friendly manner. And when they acknowledged the stealth changes, they did not in fact roll them back. They just issued additional patch notes. That is also a very sad result for all the Warlock fans out there that were hoping for a rollback on some of their nerfs this release. In that very same message Bungie posted, they also finally explained why health and shield regeneration might feel worse now. Some very unfortunate and frustrating balancing decisions made here. Bungie also went and remade the entire armor and stat system in the game. Let's talk about that one next. Armor stats now scale with each individual point that is invested, which is good since at least that means you no longer need increments of 10 and stats will no longer be wasted. Armor stats also now provide 2 benefits. One benefit is provided from 1 to 100 points and a secondary enhanced benefit is provided from 101 to 200 points. Here's how these base stats have changed. Mobility is now weapons. This one is very important since here you get bonus reserves if you have more than 100 stats in weapons. And you deal more damage, making this already feel like it's gonna be mandatory. This is also the reason why ammo generation feels worse now, since you are encouraged to raise your stats over 100 to get more ammo. This issue specifically and the new ammo system have been addressed in a patch, which will be shown later. Resilience is now health, and finally this stat does not feel so mandatory anymore. Thank God. Recovery is now class. If you were wondering why class reset skills no longer reset your skill, well, that is because you need a certain amount of class stats in order to get that skill reset. 70 to be precise. Strength is now melee, and as already stated, you get more melee damage for stats over 100, and also if you have low stats here, any melee reset ability is no longer going to reset your melee skill. Discipline is now grenade, the same thing applies here. Intellect is now super. Not only does this increase your super regeneration speed, but it raises the damage of your super when above 100. And yes, this has turned out to be yet another very mandatory stat. The following stats are now deprecated. 100 resilience is gone and now default. That's a win in my book. Everyone gets 60 recovery by default. Titans and Warlock get 30 mobility and Hunters get 40 mobility by default. All old stats on armor are converted into the new system, and you end up with some random assortment of stats depending on what your old armor was focused on. That could be good or bad for you. In general, this feels very much like another soft sunset, because now with the new system you are encouraged to get the new and improved armor. And this wouldn't be such an issue if you could reasonably get your hands on good armor in this game. They also had to touch the ammo regeneration system, making it feel much worse unless you invest in the weapons stat. The amount of ammo granted by bricks in PvE has been modified correspondingly, aka it's much worse than it was, especially now on a low weapons stat build. Bungie had to address this and then issue a patch to fix their self-made problem. They increased the ammo meter progress with low investment by 50% in PvE and some other assorted changes shown in the same patch notes. The question, however, still remains, Why was it released in such a state to begin with? They also added armor set bonuses and archetypes. What does that mean? Well, now your old armor looks much worse. Firstly, since some of the armor set bonuses are already pretty strong and new ones will be added in the future. Archetypes dictate how stats are allowed to roll on certain items. That means the archetype of the armor might not allow for certain stats to roll in combination with another. And it also means that any low tier armor has stats that are completely at 0. Here are those archetypes with their primary and secondary stats. As you can see, weapons and super, for example, cannot roll together at this point. Maybe that's a good thing. The new armor rolls heavily lean into these specific stat archetypes, meaning that other stats are left behind or not there at all. This effect is obviously worse on low tier armor and gets less bad on higher tier armor. It is very clear that Bungie wants to push the player base into more specialized builds that sacrifice one stat in favor of the other. So in any build with these new specialized armor pieces, you might end up with the rest of your stats in the low 40s or 50s. Keep in mind that stats under 30 give you a penalty. So if you got a fragment in your class build that reduces a stat under 30, it will hit you with that stat penalty. For some reason, all of this ends up making certain legacy armor better, since legacy armor has a more even stat distribution and can roll these so-called illegal impossible stats. Only at much higher tiers of armor will you see a difference in stat distribution, and at that point it is better than the old legacy armor system. Some new activities also just flat out don't allow you to use old armor, since they exclusively require the use of new gear tied to a seasonal release. And not just that, since new activities score you on your performance, wearing old legacy armor might reduce your score, leading to worse rewards at the end. Therefore, if you wear old armor, you get less good rewards, or might not even be able to play certain activities. Yeah, that does sound very much like sunsetting. Let's go over the new armor and weapons tier system now. All armor and weapons now drop in tiers 1 to 5. You no longer need upgrade modules to increase the light level of armors and weapons. Upgrading armor is also much cheaper now, basically only requiring shards and glimmer. The only exceptions are exotics, who are still a bit pricey to upgrade. For weapons, this means the following. Tier 1 weapons, those are baseline legendary weapons. Tier 2, these weapons will drop with 2 pre-enhanced weapon perks, basically being similar to crafted weapons. Tier 3, these weapons will drop with a minimum of 2 pre-enhanced weapon perks per column. Tier 4 has all previous benefits and includes enhanced barrels, enhanced magazines and enhanced mods, basically enhancing those effects. Tier 5, all the same benefits, and in addition to all these benefits, they get an enhanced origin trait, a unique ornament and visual effect, and a mod slot with an exclusive kill effect. The weapon tier system is pretty much just for stat chasers. A tier 2 weapon is very capable and similar to old enhanced weapons before the update. Therefore, higher tier weapons are nice to have, but not necessarily a must. The armor tier system, however, has much more of an impact on both gameplay and effectiveness of builds, but also on the grind to acquire said armor pieces. The armor tiers are as follows. Armor stat distributions depend on each tier. Higher tiers have better stats and a better stat distribution. And tier 5 armor allows you to min-max your stats a little bit. Armor tiers are much more of an issue to me personally, as you really want those high tier armors now. It's not just okay to have only tier 2 armor now, as builds using tier 2 and even tier 3 might feel significantly left behind and worse to play than before the update. Now, all of that would not be such a big issue if you could get your hands on gear in a reasonable time and fashion. Gear drops are tied to your light level, and you are set to light level 10 with the start of a DLC, and thus we finally have to talk about the grind. It's time to talk about what irks me the most about this game right now, and that is the new grind. As stated, everyone is set to light level 10 on release. At the end of the legendary campaign you are close to about 200 light level, and the new light level maximum is currently set to 400 and 450. Starting with a light level 200, you need powerful drops in order to increase your light level in small increments. In addition, to upgrade gear past 200 plus, you need an increased amount of materials that can only be gained by recycling those very same powerful drops. At the end of a season, everyone will be reset to 200 light level again. And then the maximum light level also increases to 550 in the next big content release. Different difficulty modes are also not accessible until you reach the respective light level requirement. Here's how this works. Normal activities are basically accessible at any light level and drop tier 1 armor. Then you can play normal advanced activities at any light level and get tier 2 armor drops. Then you need to be at light level 200 plus and play expert activities and get an A rank from the score in order to get tier 3 armor drops. The same goes for master activities. At 300 plus, get an A rank, get tier 4 armor, and at light level 400 plus, you get the A rank and tier 5 armor drops. And this is basically the Grandmaster activities. You have to at least reach 300 light level to even be able to run any kind of meaningful endgame activity. You must play those difficulty modes and at that light level to drop the respective tiered armor. That means only 400 plus light level activities have even a chance to drop tier 5 armor. And you have to match the light level to receive that drop. In addition, you have to reach the required mission score. This means reaching the maximum points, as anything less is going to offer much worse rewards. Your light level is also not the only thing that raises the ranking score you can achieve in missions. Your maximum score is also affected by modifiers that you can set, and the armor that you are wearing, and if you carry seasonal gear or not. Tiered drops are also tied to your guardian rank. As for example, you cannot get tier 3 weapons from the arms weak engrams unless you reach a specific guardian rank. Higher guardian ranks naturally then reward higher tiers of armor and weapons from activities. This leads to players now also being forced to level up their guardian rank too. That also means if you play with a team that has a higher light level than you, they might get all the tier 5 gear, but since you did not increase an arbitrary number, you are getting none of that gear. Bungie has addressed this in a patch at this point in time. Players are now allowed to start all Master and Grandmaster activities when they unlock Expert difficulty at power 170. That, however, does not change the fact that enemies 100 power above you will still be invulnerable to damage, and it does nothing to ease the power grind since tiered drops are still tied to your light level. In addition to the stat changes, the tier system and the insane light level grind, they also gave arbitrary percentage-based buffs to the featured weapons and armor this season. Why? Is the armor and are the guns not good enough on their own? Do we really need that extra 10% to make people put on the seasonal gear? 10% is likely significant enough that any endgame player is going to take this into account when playing a high-level activity. And keep in mind that gear changes every season, so you are punished if you don't use the seasonal gear or the seasonal armor. All of this might also have a negative effect on the LFG system. You might not be welcome in a group if you don't run the featured gear. No T4 allowed, bring at least tier 3 gear, and so on. I can also imagine the following statements being issued to players who are now underperforming due to the new system. Quote unquote, did you check if you are wearing the seasonal armor? Maybe if you put on a set you won't die so much, or can you please put on one of the seasonal weapons, your DPS sucks. This might all lead to more player frustration and toxicity. On a personal note, I am not a big fan of armor grinding in this game. I was okay with gear that I previously had, I still performed well, I felt useful to my team, I even felt pretty powerful at times. Weapon grinding is completely fine, but for armor, I could have gone without that. It makes me feel inadequate and a hindrance to all potential teammates that have to put up with me from now on. If the grind was halfway acceptable, maybe I would have engaged. But the insane light level grind in conjunction with the unfun difficulty requirement and the low drop chances makes me not want to engage with this system at all. So where are you going to do all of that grinding now? Should you actually want to torture yourself? Well, that would be the portal. This is now the primary landing page if you open up the game. They also made the director grayscale so it looks as uninteresting as possible. Therefore you know for sure this is old and lame and you should go to the colorful new portal instead. Bungie has announced that color will return to the director after much outcry. Why was there a need to desaturate the director in the first place? The portal has a certain amount of activities to choose from. It should be noted that currently the section is very sparse, does not rotate very well, and a lot of the activities have no proper matchmaking even though they are in the section for fireteam play. From here you're supposed to launch missions either in a quick play rotation or manually. Quick play has set modifiers, while in manual play you can set those modifiers yourself. You need to set a difficulty, then set specific modifiers for the mission to get a specific rank. In the mission you need to reach that score threshold to be rewarded with the forecasted result. The UI UX design of the portal makes no sense in general and is a detriment to new players especially. Seasonal rewards are not in the seasonal hub, but non-seasonal weekly challenges are in the seasonal hub. Seasonal conquests are in different menus even though they should be in the Pinnacle tab with other Pinnacle activities. The entire portal navigation is only effectively made for controllers. The bonus reward in PvP matches depends on a win, but this is not shown anywhere. The Crucible reward track is not always properly displayed. When inspecting the rewards of an activity, there is no longer any mention of completion reward or bonus drop. It just shows an engram, a strange coin and an enhancement core. Some activities have a bonus focus, but no bonus drop associated with it, just a normal completion reward. It is also unclear if the bonus focus is an extra reward or replaces one of the other rewards. The reward rank uses tiers like copper, bronze, etc., and this is only explained when inspecting the potential rewards of an activity. There is no detailed explanation of the reward multiplier. There are a ton of different confusing naming conventions for rewards in the portal. Reward rank, Crucible reward rank, reward multiplier, reward package, reward score, reward grade, challenge multiplier, completion reward, bonus drop, bonus reward. This system was supposedly added for new players, by the way. And all of this leads into the next big point, which is all about motivation and how Bungie treats those who actually engage with this frustrating gear grind. Grinding for a high light level, playing at -40 or more light level and setting in negative modifiers surely leads to a miserable experience. All of that for maybe tier 3 or tier 4 drops, which could be both weapons or armor. Some activities at least have deterministic drops, rewarding certain armor or weapons as a featured reward. The time to reward ratio seems very skewed in this new system, not respecting the player's time adequately. The worst part of all of that is, in order to efficiently grind, the player is forced to run the limited selection of missions over and over again. Sometimes this comes down to repeating the fastest available mission exclusively, making the gear grind an even more boring slogfest. The replay value in this system is close to 0. Not just that, Bungie immediately removed the fastest and best light level farm, which was the Encore mission. Naturally, this leads to the old age accusation that Bungie only fixes the methods that are beneficial to players and ignores other bugs and issues. They also removed a grappling hook modifier, which looked pretty fun and was even shown off by the developers in their livestream. But the grappling hook led to the Encore mission being completed too fast, and reportedly it also dropped too much loot. Which raises the question why nobody in the QA team or any team realized that this was an issue before it was put into the live build. It was also very obvious that setting up such an insane gear grind would result in players gravitating towards the fastest and most efficient farm possible. The mission was then re-enabled with fixed rewards, and then promptly disabled again because players found another way to get loot too quickly. All of the old legacy activities from raids, vanguard operations to lost sectors are not fully incorporated into the portal yet. Bungie also made a statement regarding this situation, promising a timeline to bring these activities back to the portal. The obvious conclusion here is that these activities should have been in the portal as the DLC was released. Remastering the entire game clearly has led to shortcomings in the pipeline for these additions to the portal. Now we have ended up with a much worse and less content-rich system, right at the point where it would have been important to deliver a rich collection of playable activities for new and returning players. This would have also kept engagement higher and lessened the monotony of the grind. And the lingering question still is, why not leave the director up and running and try to remaster it instead of placing a new system into the game that will inevitably lack content to keep the player base engaged? The time for Bungie to bring their A game was now, not when the portal is populated 2 years down the line. Players who were put off by the initial release are very likely not going to come back to the portal just because it might have more content in the future. Now, there's just a few more things remaining that I would like to talk about. For a game that wants to call itself an MMO, it does not have a lot of social features in the portal, and both of the new destinations, the Paleheart and Kepler, were Fireteam only. That means these new destinations are not public patrol spaces and therefore not populated with other players. This leads to a very lonely gameplay experience unless you have an active community of friends that play Destiny, or you just have to use the LFG functions. Bungie also removed the Pathfinder system, which rewarded Bright Dust repeatedly in favor of a time-limited weekly reward track. The entire crafting system was killed off and replaced by the new gear grind. There is also a severe lack of new gear and varied drops in this system, as it is not populated enough at this point. It evokes memories from the time when Bungie sunset gear for the first time. When playing solo ops missions, the return to orbit function did instead just start a new activity. In a patch, Bungie addressed this and just reworded the function. The return to orbit prompt during post-activity has been changed to continue to more accurately describe the behavior. Xur sells only legacy weapons and still offers upgrade modules? The Sunder Doctrine, content that was released just 5 months ago, is now outdated even more, since it is effectively hard-capped at Tier 2 weapons. The portal does not rotate available strikes. All the enemies have insanely inflated health pools on higher difficulties. Their combat behavior and intelligence remains unchanged. Boss fights on Mythic devolve into holding down the mouse button with Outbreak perfected for 30 minutes. The entire light level system discourages playing with people in different light level brackets. The tower vendor reputation rewards are gone now. The changes to Shatter no longer allows Warlock Transcendent grenades to stun 2 different champion types. Just another one in the long list of undocumented Warlock nerfs. The ghost mods that are supposed to target specific armor archetypes are bugged, making them effectively useless and a waste of a mod slot. The Sieve activity only drops up to 300 light level gear, forcing you into the portal for higher power level items. Exotic focusing at Ada 1 is bugged, not allowing for certain items to be re-rolled. Raids like Salvation's Edge were made artificially more difficult. Raids and Pinnacle activities in general are now set at -10 power deltas, meaning these activities got harder without appropriate reward compensation. Bungie has at least acknowledged the issue and set up a date for a targeted fix. Thank you, Bungie. If you have the max stack of 240 spoils of conquest from raids, any additional ones that drop from feats or chests are no longer sent to the postmaster. The rewards for 3 matches of PvP, 3 strikes or 3 gambit matches are also gone now. Vanguard Ops completions don't reward exotic engrams anymore. Raids and dungeons will return back to the portal supposedly during September at the earliest. Bungie claimed that all dungeons and raids are included in this planned release. Let's hope that they're actually not lying this time. The light level grind feels pointless in many ways, due to the activity modifiers setting players at a lower power delta at all times. Perk names are no longer shown when hovering over gear. And that's it. Time for the conclusion. I understand that Bungie wanted a reset after the final shape. jumping into a new saga, freshen up the game. But was this truly the right approach? How long is the studio going to be occupied with fixing all the newly introduced issues? All this, once again, is going to take time away from the development of potentially new content for Destiny or even entirely different projects that the studio might be working on. We are once again back to fixing Destiny from the ground up. Bungie just had to reinvent the wheel, ripping off every other wheel from the cart that was already slowly rolling down the mountain to the edge of a cliff. Now the studio has to rebuild all the other wheels and hope that they don't fall off that cliff. I do hope this game can recover over time, but for me my playtime will likely plummet to a minimum until things significantly improve. I do not feel engaged with the new system, the grind and the new armor tiers. Playing with friends is naturally always going to be a delight, but I cannot see myself running solo operations for an arbitrary numbers increase. Maybe I'll come back from time to time to look at possibly a new DLC release or an update. Maybe then I might be back. Yeah, and that's the long and short of it. A DLC mostly dragged down by its gameplay and surrounded by horrible system changes to the base game. I wonder who truly thought that these decisions would lead Bungie and Destiny forward? We took 6 steps back and stumbled, and now we need to slowly get back up again. Well, let's see how Bungie handles it. I guess, see you next time? Maybe?